Hey everyone, I'm Anne. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. Somewhere along the way, masculinity got put on trial. Not the kind of trial where truth is sought, but a public execution by headline, hashtag, and half-truth. We took the word toxic and stapled it to masculinity like they were born together, as if being a man, leading, protecting, building, and providing suddenly became a crime. But masculinity itself isn't toxic. The absence of grounded masculinity is. When men stop leading with purpose, stop protecting what matters, and stop channeling their power into creation instead of destruction, that's when the world suffers. We've blurred the line between strong and suppressive, decisive and domineering, provider and patriarch. We've convinced boys that their instincts are wrong, their aggression must be shamed, their emotions must be hidden. And then we wonder why they implode or check out completely. Here's the truth. You can't raise emotionally intelligent men by castrating masculinity. You can't build strong families by tearing down fathers. And you sure as hell can't heal society by declaring half of it the enemy. What we need isn't less masculinity, it's healthy masculinity. Rooted, accountable, protective, passionate, anchored in purpose, not ego. Men who can stand in their power without needing to dominate. Men who can cry, create, connect, and still carry the damn weight when it's needed. Because when men rise in their true power, everyone wins. Women feel safer, children feel grounded, communities thrive. The war on men isn't just killing masculinity, it's starving humanity. So today, we're stripping away the labels, the shame, the stereotypes, and getting naked about what masculinity really means in 2025. Because it's time we stop demonizing the masculine and start redefining it. Let's get naked. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Kirk Kappelhoff. Kirk is a finance executive, entrepreneur, and content creator dedicated to helping men live with purpose, strength, and clarity. Welcome to the show, Kirk.
Thanks for having me, Anne.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So start by telling us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into masculinity or anything else that comes up as we go.
Sounds good. I mean, simply put, life started in Abu Dhabi. That's where I was born, son to a father who worked in oil, and then started moving a lot. I was born there, moved to Melbourne, moved back to Perth, moved back to Melbourne. That was all in Australia. Had stints in Singapore, Scotland. Now I came to America for college. Stuck around, and I'm in New York, but I've lived in California, Miami, Washington, D.C. I love moving. I love something new, love the fresh stuff. So that's kind of a bit on the travel piece. But in terms of what I've been doing, everything and everything that travel would permit me doing, like COVID obviously took a hit when where you had to work. During COVID, I just got up and left to South America. And so I did 18 countries in 18 months and just took my laptop and some Wi-Fi and worked, and I work in finance. And so I just got to jump around and sort of do my thing. So I was very lucky in that sense. There was not a lot of COVID protocol in South America, I would tell you that. And so it was essentially just, I kind of skipped, I avoided that part of my life. But now settled in New York. Or technically in Jersey City now, and I absolutely love it. 4 seasons I don't love. I'm more of a let me just have the sun kind of guy. But it's been beautiful to have a bit of community. When you're on the road, you don't get community.
Right.
It's one of the things you forego. You don't get friends that are meaningful. You only get friends in passing, right?
Sure.
And you also find it difficult to make a routine. Like getting up and going to the gym is hard enough, but when you're on the road traveling full time, the extra mental effort that's required to find a new gym, to get up and go there, to not have the people that are keeping you accountable in the morning. You come into the gym or whatever, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're eating well when all you want to do is eat the local food, but in reality, you should be eating home cooked meals. All of that, that's the negative side of traveling full time. But when you're at home and you have some stability, habit is a wonderful thing. And I've been loving having a closet.
That's awesome. How long since you've had a closet? Like when did you stop and settle down in New York?
It's been, what would it be? It was May 2024 that I came over. So it's been, about a year and a half now, I guess. And loved it. It's been really good. Like building some community. New York is a phenomenal place to make friends, to date, for job opportunities. So New York's one of those places, if you put yourself out there, it'll give a lot back to you. Funnily enough, New York is considered according to all studies, one of the loneliest cities in America.
I heard that the other day, and I thought that's interesting because you guys are really packed in there.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard of what was that study? So many of these studies occur on rats, but there was this one where if there was a certain point at which you packed too many rats together in a space, that they just started going crazy. Like they started eating each other, like doing things that's not typical rat behavior. And they said, 93% of our DNA matches rats. Hence why we do so much studies on them. And maybe if you pack too many humans in a similar place, we kind of go crazy too. So very interesting.
I love that. I love that. Tell me what drives you for what you do. I know that I was reading your bio a little bit, and you seem like you're very passionate about the masculinity piece of that, and really kind of helping advance that forward, not from a place of blaming, but a place of solutions, and helping people kind of understand what that looks like. What sparked that for you? Where did that passion begin?
Sure. Well, it certainly did not come from an all-encompassing knowledge. It wasn't like I knew everything and needed to share the world everything that I know. It actually came from a place of the unknown. I have had the pleasure of having a very good upbringing. I had very good parents that loved me. I had good opportunities. I maximized those opportunities. I had everything I could have wanted. I'm very grateful for that. And with all of that, I found myself not knowing answers to simple questions like, should a man hold the door or not? Should he cry? When is he allowed to cry? When can a man be angry and when is he not allowed to be? Should he be feared or respected or both? Simple things like this, I really didn't know the answer to, especially in this world, this ever-growing world where toxic masculinity and masculinity meant the same thing. So I started this endeavor to basically answer the question for myself, how should a man be? And that's very difficult. It's very easy to tell how a man shouldn't be, right? You see someone, you go, yeah, that's not how you should. Yeah, that's not a good look, right? And maybe you hear some crazy things that like Andrew Tate might say, where like he says 40% of the things right, and then he just goes on this tangent. You're like, oh my gosh, well, I know that's not right. But it's easy to identify what's wrong, but saying what it should be, that's a lot more difficult. And I really struggled with that, and I didn't know how to do it. So what I did is I broke it down, not so much defining masculinity with like a sentence, but with challenges, which is this. Every man, perhaps even every human, faces a common set of challenges. There's internal challenges, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. You can't avoid those. You're gonna face mental challenges, and how you define those especially, it's very important. But then external to those, you have things like social issues, relational issues, maybe not friends, but with like partners, girlfriends, financial issues. That's an important part of life, and especially since men consider 90% of their identity coming from what they can produce and earn, essentially. That's a big one. And then last one, vocationally, or what you might call professionally, because it's not always the same as financial. Albert Einstein was, he's known for a lot of things, but none of them was being a patent clerk, which is what his profession was, right? So those are what I call the inner war, those four internal, and then the external gauntlet, which are the external ones. And across all of those, what I'm trying to do is figure out, how do I do each of them well? We've all seen the guy who's incredibly wealthy sitting on Wall Street, but he weighs way too much and he's going to die at 60 because of his heart problems. That's not what we're aiming for. Similarly, the guy in the gym that can bench the whole weight stack but doesn't have any friends or doesn't have 2 cents to rub together, that's not what we're going for either. There has to be balance across the scale of masculinity, and the goal is to be somewhere in the range of maximizing your potential across each of them. So that's what I thought I want to do for me. How do I get there? I don't know. I had to create measurement systems. I had to quantify these sorts of things to figure out, what even makes sense from a social perspective. How many friends should I have? What's the quality of those friendships? How often should I be dating? Should I be dating? Am I ready for that? These sorts of questions I started answering, and I realized in talking with other men about them, other men found them interesting too. And I thought, well, look, if I'm benefiting from this and I've had this amazing upbringing that I wouldn't trade for the world, I can imagine that other men who might not have been given the same upbringing, or maybe have even had a better upbringing but still missed a couple pieces, could benefit from it as well. And so really that's what I'm doing. I'm sharing my personal diary of how should a man be.
This so incredible. Like listening to you speak and the work that you're doing is blowing my doors off, because it's so needed. It is so easy to identify what it shouldn't be, right? But being able to really like dig into the meat and potatoes and say, okay, we know what it shouldn't be. What should it be? You know, I think when you look at it and you say, okay, it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that, and people do that, like you said with the Andrew Tate or whoever, you can say that. But then nobody like sticks around long enough to figure out what it should be and then share that knowledge as well. So this feels really powerful to be able to like dig into that for yourself and then be able to share that with other people.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so interesting, especially when you take a look at like what's happening at a macro level, because individually everyone's a little bit different. But when you take a look at macro trends, it's very revealing. Like, for example, let's start in high school. In the top 10% of any given high school, on average, in the top 10 percentile, 2/3 of the top 10 percentile will be female, 1/3 will be male. If you switch over to the bottom 10 percentile, and we're talking about grades right now, 2/3 of it will be male, 1/3 female. So it's flipped. Women are dominating high school. So then are they dominating in college? Well, 70% of girls go on to college, only 40% of boys. So then what happens in college? Well, the grade distribution I described in high school remains pretty much the same. The graduation rates remain pretty much the same. And now, and this is something that we haven't seen ever, in 22 of the biggest cities in America, between the ages of 16 and 29, girls are out-earning boys and men for the same job and same age. Never happened before. It makes sense when you think about it. The highest earning jobs are the ones that require a college degree normally, and girls have more college degrees now, and so it makes sense. But one thing that's shocking is that in every OECD country in the world, there is not a single one where there are more men with bachelor's degrees than women. So women are kicking butt, and they should keep kicking butt. Yeah. And one thing that I'm always careful to say here is that this is not a men versus women thing.
Sure.
Life expectancy has increased in both genders. So why not can fruition both increase, right? This isn't a battle there. So that's not what interests me so much. I think women should keep kicking butt. What interests me is that if we compare today's generation of men across a variety of things, and I'll list those off, to their grandfathers, a previous generation, they're performing worse on every single factor. It's incredible. So let's take a look at something like mentally. We've already talked about how they're the kind of the educational laggards. Emotionally, men have never felt more alone. It used to be 16% of men said they felt alone often or always. Now that's 28%. It's virtually doubled. If you take a look at it spiritually, or coming from a sense of purpose, is kind of how I talk about it when we're talking about spirituality. Men today are taking their lives at rates we haven't seen ever. It's increased 50% since the year 2000. Richard Reeves from the Brookings Institute calls these deaths of despair, meaning men who are taking their lives either through alcohol, narcotics, overdoses, these sorts of things. What's interesting is if you had kept the rate of suicide in the year 2000 the same until today, it's increased massively, but if had you kept it the same, 400,000 more men would be alive today in America than what are currently alive. That's a hit to your population, and it's an enormous tragedy. To put it in perspective, that's more men than we lost in World War II. Okay?
You're giving me full body chills right now just saying these figures, because it speaks to me, the men component of stuff. Because of the fact that I have brothers that are important to me, my son, my husband, my father, like all of that. But when you say those numbers and you think about 400,000 people, I see at the micro level where I feel that man struggling,
right,
where he doesn't have an outlet. He can't talk. He has to be the tough one. Don't be a pussy, man up, all of that stuff that we've taught them. And then to be able to see what the effect of that is on our society, it's devastating.
Sure. I mean, and you were in the construction boat, so you saw this more than anybody, this whole man up culture.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
I fit right into it, right? I mean, we were talking before we started recording that toxic masculinity isn't just for men, right? Like I had that energy for a long time. There's supposed to be a balance in your masculine and feminine. No matter if you're male or female, there's supposed to be that balance there. And we have done a huge disservice to our men by raising them the way that we have, right? And again, everyone is doing the best that they can, but we know better now, so we should do better now, right? Not just with our young boys, but with our men that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And how can we help them understand that it's not the right way to bottle it up and not speak about things? I've had guests on the show before that talk about their husbands committing suicide and what that looks like. It's devastating to their wives, to their partners, to their families, to their kids who grow up now with a man. And the idea of him bleeding alone in the dark without an outlet, that rips my soul out. I mean, that's just, it's too much. We have to figure out what is the right thing, right? Which is why it's so fascinating, the work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on of things, right? Like even financially, men are earning less today than they were in 1972 when you take inflation into account. There's a $13,000 difference if you take in inflation, which is a 28% reduction in purchasing power. And one thing that I mentioned before, men, for whatever reason, who knows whether this is a nature-nurture thing, but such a huge potential proportion of their identity, their self-worth, that they self-report comes from their salary or their net worth. And women don't have that attachment to that. Of course, women want to have money too, but men have this unhealthy attachment to money. And so part of what I talk about in finance is finding a way to have a healthy relationship with money. It's easy to say when you have a lot of money, yeah, I have a healthy relationship with money. It's when you don't have a lot of money, can you still do it, right? Can you still have a humility about it, which is very difficult. And then one thing that always strikes me, which is so interesting, is that in 2005, 1 in 10 men hadn't had sex in the last year. Today, it's 31%. 31% in the last year of ages between 22 and 29 years old haven't had sex. And this is youth, right? We're not talking about people in their 60s. We're talking about 22 to 29, right? 60, maybe I get it.
Right,
but
sure.
when you're young, are men really increasing their appetite for celibacy? I don't think so. I think they're living in their basements, and that's in fact what the studies show. There was this really fun one from 2010 where they asked boys and men, who is your first call if something goes wrong in your life? You need help moving a box, or a tragedy strikes, you have a car crash. And it was 45% of the time men would call a friend first, and then somewhere down the list was their parents. Now it's flipped, and it's not quite 45%, but it's something like in the high 30s, men will call their parents first, not their friends. And you go, okay, well, why is that occurring? So then you take a look at the deeper statistics. Now more than ever, men between the ages of 15 and 29 are living at home. You've got this humongous proportion of men, 31%, that's more than the number of men that are living with partners or wives, living at home with their parents. So of course they're going to call mom and dad. That's where they're still living, right? And so there's nothing wrong inherently with living at home. But of course, what we want to do is make you self-sufficient. A man that can look after himself is one level of masculinity. A man that can look after several people is another level of masculinity. And that should be our goal. Jordan Peterson has this great quote. He says, your purpose in life is to find the biggest burden that you can bear and bear it, right? If you can take on the most amount of stuff, maybe you can't take on more. That's fine, don't take it on. But find what your maximum level is and take that on. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be tough, but that's your purpose. Life's not always meant to be easy. And I think sometimes in the West, especially, where we have a very, very good life. We live in the top 1% of the top 1% of history. Let's say there's been about 100 billion people in existence ever throughout time. We are living in the best time ever, period.
I know.
And it's very easy to say, well, life's hard because you had too many ice cubes in my coffee, right? Whereas, 50 years ago, they didn't have hot showers.
Right. Like, it's so funny to me because when I listen to people complain, I'm like, I can't. It's a real panty dryer. It's like, you guys don't understand how amazing we have things. Look for the things to be grateful for. Stop being a douchebag, right?
Sure.
Because if you're looking around about, I had too much, they made my coffee hot instead of iced, or, vice versa, it's like, oh my God, have you been to other countries? Have you seen what's fucking happening in this world that we are? We, in the United States, are fortunate and overindulged.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm an immigrant to here from Australia. Australia is an incredible country.
Sure.
But even I can tell the difference between Australia and the US. The level of freedom is substantially different. The technology, substantially different. There's incredible things about Australia, some that are even better than the US. But on the whole, America has done the most phenomenal job of creating culture, creating a nation. Obviously, everything shows for it. Silicon Valley produces 90% of the innovation. Army's the biggest in the world. You've never seen more democracy than you have here, right? And personally, I love this country. So I'm with you on the complaining side. One thing that I've been trying to figure out on that piece of complaining versus being grateful is you want to be grateful enough for life, that you don't fall into depression, but not satisfied enough with life that you get content and don't want to grow.
Yes.
And that's a really difficult balance to find. And whether you pray or meditate, I find that actually cures it.
Yeah.
Right? If you just take 2 minutes, whether that's prayer or meditation, right, to just think, one, who's the man I want to be today? And you remember like you just start thinking and your mind goes to crazy places. You're like, wow, that could have happened yesterday and it didn't. Thank God that didn't happen, right? I almost got hit by a car or something. Or all these different things that could have gone wrong, right? The drive here, what if I was delayed? What if my Uber got into an accident? What if my flight was delayed? All of these things could have gone wrong and they didn't. I'm so grateful for that. Nevertheless, I've got work to do and I want to keep growing, right? And finding that balance can be quite difficult. So tying into complaining, I can see that being very tough.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was it? What is it that as you're doing all of this research, I think you're writing a book that's forthcoming to kind of explain all of this, and do you give helpful tips and tricks in those as far as how to figure out that balance and what things to explore? I know when you were saying just getting curious about yourself, and that's kind of what sparked all of this, which I think is powerful. What is included in the book to kind of bring that out for other people?
Yeah, there's lots of cool tips, tricks, things that you can do. I try to focus on the big ones that will have an immediate impact on people's life. One is creating systems, right? Systems is something that an author, John C. Maxwell, which you might have heard of, introduced me to. He said systems permit ordinary people to do extraordinary things predictably. When you set up a system, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm creating a world where I'm going to put the best version of myself forward. And then the next morning when I wake up, even when I'm not feeling great, I've already done the work ahead of time to plan for this. I'm going to hit that system. And so, my favorite example of systems is Muhammad Ali. He was fighting George Foreman, I believe it was. And this was to win back the heavyweight title. Now, we know Muhammad Ali is this great fighter today. And we're like, yeah, of course he could beat him and all this sort of things. But nobody thought he was going to win this fight because George Foreman, his opponent, had just obliterated. It was Joe Frazier and Ken Norton. And both of those guys had beat Ali. So you've got this guy that Ali's fighting who had destroyed 2 people that had beat Ali. There was no chance it was going to happen. What Ali came up with was the rope-a-dope system, which he's now famous for. He sat on the ropes and just got hit, obliterated back and forth, wearing down his opponent. And Rocky actually took after this when they made those movies. And then, once his opponent was tired, he would go batter at him. Now, George Foreman had never had a fight last longer than 5 rounds, including with those 2 other guys that I mentioned that had beat Ali. This fight with Ali went for 7 rounds, and on that 7th round, Ali knocked him out. It was because of a system. It's systems that make the shopping list maker spend less and buy healthier food than the person that goes into the grocery store without a list, right? These systems help people live a better life. Laying out your gym clothes before you go to bed, or wearing them, right? Not buying candy so that it's not in the house so you don't eat it. Saying I'm only going to eat at home instead of, I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat. Those things drastically change your life. And let me put it in perspective here. Roger Federer just did a speech at a graduation, one of the Ivies recently. And he said, I'm one of the best that's ever lived. And everyone said, of course you are. And he said, but I only won 74% of my games to become the best. And I said, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And he goes, how many points did I win to win 74% of my games? And the answer was 53%. He won just over half. He was batting just over 500 in order to win 74%, which made him one of the greatest in the world. And I think some people think I need to be perfect in order for me to achieve what I want to achieve. You don't.
You don't.
You need to bat just over 500 each day to have an impact on your life. This is actually what I call the mental challenge of men. That little war in your head, the civil war where you say, I really want to eat that cake. But then another part of your brain, equally as powerful, says, no, you really don't want to eat that cake. You get home from work. I want to lay on the couch. I want to go to the gym. How do we win those little wars? Those are the points of the tennis match, so to speak.
I agree.
That if we win them, we win our life.
I agree. Those are the things that, so I just finished writing a book that's coming out called,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell us about that.
So it's called The Life Hack Playbook, and it's based on the exact same thing, right? It's these little things where you're setting yourself up for success. There's not magic in me and how I've made my life amazing. It's just setting myself up for success by, do I want this or do I want this, right? Do I want extra comfort in my bed for a few minutes or do I want to be strong as fuck by going to the gym, right? It's an either or. Take the emotion out of it. It's like you literally get to choose. Care about yourself, love yourself enough to want that bigger result than whatever the comfort of just staying in bed is, right?
That's
and
amazing.
it's hacking your life where you're just small tweaks. That's it. You're just making small tweaks, but it makes this huge difference. People think guys like who you're referencing are so amazing. It's like, no, he just has a good system, right? Like, it's literally that simple.
Yeah, I was watching this interview with Obama the other day, and he said, don't let anybody tell you that you don't deserve a seat at the table.
Yeah.
He goes, I've sat at the tables with all these wealthy guys, these powerful guys, and he goes, I gotta tell you, they're not all that.
It's true.
And I was like, that's so empowering
Yes.
to hear, because you'd like to think that they're just like anybody else, but we put them on this pedestal that's unbeatable.
Yeah.
I was interested though, in your life hack book, is there one or two that you're like, these are the ones that shocked me, or these are the ones that changed my life the most?
God, there's so many. Keep talking, and I'll think about
Yeah,
what
totally.
where that is, because it is. It's like things where I think when you do them, they seem so simple when you say them out loud, but then you watch the effect that they have. One of the concepts, I think probably the main one to answer your question, is just being able to visualize my energy, right? So people talk about energy,
cool.
and it's like this. Oh, it's this energy. What's your energy? Blah 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 blah. I equate energy to Skittles. Only
Okay.
to be able to quantify them, right? Because it's like if I can visualize something, I'm a very visual learner. If I can visualize something, I can work with it. So if
Okay.
I say, okay, and you wake up in the morning and you have a bowl of Skittles, whatever your bowl of Skittles is, and you use from that with emotions, mental and physical, right? It's all the same bowl. So if you think about, I have something looming at work and I have this conflict or something, and you're drafting emails in your head and you're in the shower and it's, your mind fucking yourself into I'm not good enough and like all of these things, that costs Skittles. The same Skittles that it takes if you're in traffic and you lose your emotion because somebody cut you off and you get angry. Same, you might as well just throw a couple Skittles out the out the window.
Wow.
So it's like if you visualize it that way and then make small choices that are intentional about how you want to spend your Skittles, at the end of the day you'll have time to throw the ball with your kid because you didn't fucking waste them on some dickhead in traffic
Sure.
that didn't even realize he was driving 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's probably the biggest one, is just being able to visualize that energy. Yes, it costs energy to go to the gym, but that's an energy multiplier, right? That's a Skittles multiplier going to
Sure.
the gym because it helps you emotionally, you work through things while you're doing it, and it gives back to you, right? Dancing or singing while you're getting ready in the morning instead of watching news that drains your energy, right? Those things give you Skittles instead of taking away. So it's literally just being intentional with your energy, because I believe that that's your biggest resource. It's not time, it's not money, it's literally your Skittles and how you're going to spend them.
I love it.
I know. So it's silly stuff like that. That's how my brain works, but it turns it into something that's visual, where everyone that I've shared that with is like, holy shit, I see it now. Because you don't realize that by having that loop on repeat about the thing that your girlfriend said 2 years ago, or somebody that ghosted you, or like whatever that is, our minds are terrible, but we're not our minds. They're
Sure.
just tools. But I just don't think a lot of people realize that. They think that fucked up brain that's upstairs on top of your neck is what's running the show. And it's like, no, it's not. That's a tool, just like your body is, just like, use it accordingly. Yes, it takes work to be able to do that, but if you can visualize things and really get some traction with it, it's powerful.
Energy is everything, and most of us are spending it like drunk gamblers at a Vegas blackjack table. My book is built around one simple but powerful tool: quantifying your energy so you know exactly where it's going and how to get more of it back. Think of it as a manual for your soul's fuel tank. If you're tired of running on empty, this book will show you how to fill back up and keep yourself in the game long enough to actually win. Get your copy of the Life Hack Playbook on Amazon or on the podcast website, letsgetnakedpodcast.com.
Well, what I like that you're doing there is quantifying
Yes.
your, let's say, your energy or your vibes, which is very difficult to do. Like, that's the struggle that I've been having with these 8 sections. How do you quantify your level of spirituality? Right? Like, how do you actually do that? Now, I've had to kind of jimmy with it and isolate spirituality, and this isn't necessarily fair to the word, but I've isolated it to a sense of purpose. How do men find purpose? If you can maximize your purpose, then you can, but that's very difficult to quantify, which is what I like that you've done.
Yeah.
Right? And CrossFit has done, they've blown up in the world just by gamifying or quantifying, fitness,
Yes.
essentially, by making it running and all these sorts of things. Before, it was just the amount of weight you could lift.
Sure.
That's not interesting. But when you combine that with like a long distance run and then
Sure.
sprints, now all of a sudden the world's blown up on it and they love it. And so I like that idea.
Yeah, being able to visualize and quantify is a game changer, right? It's not like this, you can't see it kind of thing. A lot of people are very like, what is energy? They think it's some woo-woo thing. And it's
Sure.
like, you don't see Wi-Fi either, but everyone's fucking phone is hooked into that. So it's not like some crazy concept, but being able to actually like visualize it and understand when you're out, you're out. You know, a lot of people don't listen to their body when it's screaming not to do something, and they do it anyways because they're trying to people please or trying to meet an expectation that hasn't even really been communicated to them. It's just our society thinks that we have these things where we're supposed to do them. And I'm just calling bullshit on all of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like nobody wants your resent-filled help. Take care of yourself. Take care of your Skittles and then give from abundance, you know, and an overflowing cup instead of out of obligation. You know, we've all been taught, especially as women in our country, about, you know, being selfless and giving, until there's just cracks and holes everywhere, and you're just an empty, broken shell. I mean, that's what we do, both as women and as men. And I'm just saying, I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. I think, you know, going inward and figuring yourself out and taking care of your own stuff first makes it you better for everyone else, right? I've done this personal experiment in my own life over the last several years, and I'm here to tell you, it's a game changer. It's a game changer to put my own mask on first before I try to help anyone else, right? I'm a white woman in America, so I'm out there, let me help you, I can do that better, For what, right? I was on empty and I fucking got so burnt out. And then it was like, okay, where do I come back from? You know, so it was all of these things that are in this book of just the visualizations of the things that I learned from all of the books that I read and all of the healing modalities and all of the things that I did. But it's distilled through this and filter that I call it, right? Because my brain is very 8-year-old girl, simple kind of thing. But it is, it's a funny way to be like, okay, how do I work with that resource then? And being able to visualize it and do something about it changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you touch on something there that men are typically bad at, which is vulnerability.
Oh, fuck.
We're not good at that, and I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not great at it either. To be fair to us, we suffer from something called alexithymia. Alexithymia is, anyone can have it, but typically men score high in alexithymia, which means we struggle to identify emotions or what we're feeling.
Yes.
And I certainly feel that. Like, there are times where I'm feeling something and I'm like, I could not, if my life depended on it, put a word on what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
Or perhaps maybe I'm frustrated. I can feel frustration, but I don't know where it's coming from. Women are much better at tracing that back to men. And that's okay. Men just need to be aware of that so that they can handle it better. One of the things, like, there's a lot of science on this, which is so cool and very interesting. When we process emotions, by default, it's in the limbic system, which is a very old part of our brain. It's in the amygdala, in the limbic system. And the reason that's important is because it's been around longer than humanity, the limbic system. It's been in, like, lobsters, which outdates humanity forever. The prefrontal cortex, which we've all heard so much about, that's very new. That's only 200,000 years old and really only distinguished humans from the rest of the animal kingdom 50,000 years ago. So you have this 50,000-year-old piece of your brain that's telling you all the good things, delayed gratification, don't eat the cake, that sort of thing. But then you've got this 300 million-year-old brain telling you the other thing. When we process emotions, they start in that old part of the brain, in the limbic system. All that's required to move the processing, and we know this because of the electrodes put on the brain while we're feeling emotions, and move it from there to here, is acknowledgement that you're feeling it. Isn't that incredible? It's
incredible, and it's so powerful. When I was putting stuff together for this morning, I read something that was the same way. It was like, you know, men need to be able to just name it. And what a difference that makes in feeling that frustration where they come from anger and rage because they don't know how, right? We've done our men and our boys a disservice by raising them in a way of, don't be a pussy, man up, boys don't, men don't cry, all of that kind of stuff. Newsflash, men do cry. Men should cry, right? I mean, being able to acknowledge and hold space for your own emotions so that you process them in a healthy way and release them rather than just push it down, right? So I was raised in a environment where, for whatever reason, that was very important to me. The not having emotion, vulnerability was weakness, and I didn't have any of that. And so I didn't process any of the trauma that happened when I was younger. I just pushed on top of it. Everything's fine. I numbed with alcohol, right? I think for the most part in society, we all numb with whatever that is: drugs, alcohol, food, shopping, sex, like porn, whatever it is.
It's fun for a time.
It is fun for a time, right? But when you realize, like, that's not, life can be so much better if you actually, like, get that get that shit out of the gutter and clean it out, and then figure out how to process your emotions, because it is naming it. It is sitting with it. And we don't sit with things anymore because we have 1,000 distractions that are happening at any given time. But then you're not in touch with who you are. And what a waste that is. You know, it's like, we're not meant to be in this hamster wheel where we just do this same mediocre day on repeat. It's like, figure out who you are and what comes into that, right? How do you encourage men to be more vulnerable? Like, what is the way that you do that? Because I believe that that's the biggest component of it, is just men thinking that vulnerability is weakness, when I say it's a superpower, right? Which is why I'm on this podcast now, because that was, you know, when I turned things around for myself, of vulnerability isn't weakness, it's actually is my superpower.
Yeah.
I've never led with vulnerability and been disappointed by what I've gotten back, right? I've watched as it has completely changed my life over the last couple of years, and how when you lead with vulnerability, it gives other people permission to do the same, and what a release that is for people. So like in your line of work, or what you're doing with your research and stuff, how do you facilitate or encourage men to kind of get connected with it being more vulnerable?
Yeah, well, first of all, everything you're saying is correct with vulnerability, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But like, the science backs up everything you just said about the power of vulnerability. How do you get men interested in it? Men like structures. They like figuring things out. You know, working in the construction world, they like investigating things. Like, how does that work, right? So I find when you bring in the science, or what's actually happening in the brain, there's a bit of interest. For example, my mom always made this joke: men have two emotions, anger and the other one, right? I love that joke.
I love your mom.
I know, I love her too.
Anger
She's
and
great.
the other one.
Anger and the other one. And what she always told me, and she wasn't just an old wives' tale, this is real stuff. Anger is what's known by psychologists as a secondary emotion. You can be happy for the sake of being happy. Something happens, you get happy. You can be excited for the sake of being excited. Something happens, you get excited. Anger always has a primary emotion before it. Something happens, you feel something, and then anger occurs. For example, you're in traffic, someone cuts you off. You feel fear, and then you let your tongue out on them, right? A girl breaks up with you. You feel rejection, and then you lash out. You still love the person. Nothing's changed in the 4 seconds it took for her to break up with you, but you lash out with insults.
Yes.
Where's that coming from? So typically, it's shame, guilt, embarrassment, fear, rejection. Those are the primary emotions that our psyche doesn't want us to feel because they hurt, and so we go to anger. And everybody does that. It's not just men, but men are quicker to it than women are. So what I encourage men to ask themselves is this: when you get angry, what was the primary emotion? What were you feeling there? Are you afraid? Because now we're getting to the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Are you afraid, or did you feel rejected? Actually, I was embarrassed. Okay, cool. You were embarrassed. Why were you embarrassed?
Yeah.
Now we've gotten into the cool things, because anger is like putting broad brushstrokes over a painting. You've colored the whole thing black.
Yes.
What was the strokes underneath all of that black? There's something deeper there. Let's use red, because red's a better anger color.
Yeah.
Right? There's beautiful set of colors underneath there, but you've painted it all over with red so that you can feel in control, because anger makes you feel powerful, and blah, 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 blah. And what's interesting about anger is that you might feel more powerful or in control when you are angry. But across every major religion, anger is seen as a poison. Right? In Proverbs, it talks about stay away from angry people because they'll poison your brain.
Yes.
Mahatma Gandhi spoke about how you cannot see yourself in boiling water, and you won't be able to see clearly when you're angry, right? You can only see yourself in calm water.
Yes.
Super interesting stuff. All these ancient thinkers saw anger as this poison, but yet today, if you're an angry man, you're almost considered like powerful.
Right,
You're
like
almost
that's normalized.
That's normal.
Yeah.
And I think this is where that toxic piece comes in,
Yeah.
where this is allowable, but when a woman does it, she becomes a bitch, right?
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be allowable for either gender.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't be angry. Feeling anger is totally fine and okay, right? It's when we start hitting walls, right? That's where, literally hitting walls, where it's probably a bit out of hand. So how do we get them interested in it? Answer that question. That's cool. I've had a lot of fun trying to dissect myself with, why am I feeling so angry right now? It comes on weird moments.
Yes.
Very strange. The other thing to get people more interested in vulnerability, Brene Brown is the leader.
Love.
Leader.
Shout out to Brene, absolutely.
And she's done really cool research that shows that people who are vulnerable score higher in charisma, in leadership, in inspiration. They're better problem solvers. There's this researcher named Anna Bruck from the University of Mannheim, and she described or she invented and coined the term, the beautiful mess effect. When somebody else is vulnerable, let's just say Kirk looks at this vulnerable person. I give them the credit of being vulnerable and strong and honest and self-aware. That's how I think of them. But if I was to do that exact same act of vulnerability, I would think everyone's going to think I'm weak. I'm going to lose status. I'm going to lose credibility. This is what's called the beautiful effect, mess effect, and paradox. We give credit to others for their vulnerability, but we do not afford ourselves the same credit to show that vulnerability. And showing the signs is important to men because they're very like results driven and very structured. And it helped me when I see that people like me more when I'm vulnerable. It does encourage me to be vulnerable.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. And I watch as it happens in men in my life, and I have the whole spectrum, right? Of complete anger and rage to completely in touch with their emotions and willing to be vulnerable. And I watch that, and I just think, God, life is so much better from that perspective. But you do have to get past all of those yucky feelings that it feels, because even when you say, I felt embarrassed, I felt rejected, it makes a part of inside of me go, you know, because I don't want to fucking feel those either, which is why I spent so much time, pushing all of that stuff down. But when you realize, you know, if you treat that like the boogeyman under the bed, sure, it seems fucked up, but just turn the light on. It's not a big deal, right? It's like, I felt embarrassed there because of whatever. Okay, and then what happened?
Sure.
You know, it's like if you get twisted up in it, if you feel like, oh God, that rejection is terrible, and then you let your brain just noodle around on how terrible that made you feel and whatever, it's like, no, that emotion happened. It passes. You know, you don't have to fucking put all of the red anger on top of it. You can just say, that made me feel this type of way, and then get curious about that, totally. Right? And then it doesn't turn into this whole thing that, you know, like runs your life. I feel like that blanket anger that gets put on top of things, whether it's men or women, just literally feels like it disconnects you from your emotions, which are supposed to be your compass, totally. Right? That's what leads you in life. I look at a man who's willing to be vulnerable, and to me, I'm like, yeah, that's sexy as fuck. You know, so we're talking about the ages of 22 to 29 that aren't getting laid. Here's a news flash, a fucking PSA. Lean into your emotions and figure that shit out, right? And then put down your phones. People that are trying to like get hooked up with other people on your phone, stop it. We got to stop it. We got to figure out how to connect with one another in a human connection type way, and come from a place where it's not like, I'm so tough. It's like, no, nobody has to be tough anymore, right? Be connected with yourself and show that. That's what people want to see.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, when it comes to like the whole dating world today, it's very interesting. Men outnumber women on the apps 9-1. Right? There's 9 men for every 1 woman on the app.
That should tell you everything you need to know about. Get the fuck off of there. Oh my God.
Right? But 20% of the men on these apps, 20% of that 9 per 1, receive 80% of the swipes from females. Whereas men are not as picky. Men will swipe on 50 to 60% of women, whereas women will only swipe on, you know, I think it's 20 to 30% of men, right? And so you've got like this massive imbalance between who's willing to swipe on who. Now, I won't completely throw out the apps. I can't, because I met my partner on it. But even if I hadn't, I wouldn't throw them out entirely. But I would say this. Men should challenge themselves to approach women more.
Yes.
The old game of the cold approach is phenomenal. One, you have substantially more credibility. Yes. And the worst you get is a no. Yeah. But that, and it's also fun. It's also really fun to cold approach girls and have a conversation. Maybe it leads nowhere. I've got great rejection stories when you approach someone and they're like, yeah, I got a boyfriend. Like, why'd you talk to me for 10 minutes? You know? But also, you never know what can come from it. And I've heard awesome stories. I got a couple friends that are big on the code approach game. They delete the apps and they're just like, I'm only meeting girls in the wild. And I'm like, awesome. Like, good for you. That takes balls.
It does. But I think that that's so much more fun, right? And as a woman coming from the other side of that, it's like, yes, absolutely. That's fucking game. Whether you're my person or not my person, it doesn't matter. You know, I've been with my husband for 24 years and I look at that and I think, if we had to do dating apps back then where I'm looking at him on paper, I wouldn't have fucking swiped whatever direction is that you're supposed to swipe if you like somebody. Like, he and I would never be together. And he's my person. Right. But you don't know that if you don't have that electricity between you or that spark. And I realize that in our society that we live in now, we have so many fewer opportunities to be able to meet people out in the wild, right? But then let's do something about that, right? I'm coming from this place of understanding that I think human connection is the biggest component of things. How do we foster that? How do we facilitate more of that? How do we encourage men to show up in that way and women to show up in that way, where put your phone down and have a human connection with somebody? Because think about the times where you do the cold approach on someone. whether it ends up resulting in something or not, you have that fun connection. You have the story, right? They have that as well. It makes you smile. I mean, you're smiling sitting here thinking about it right
Totally.
now. I am as well, right? Instead of feeling like you're on the phone going, oh, another fucking douchebag that has a gym selfie or whatever, whatever the hell. We used to do this thing called the Tinder game when we would travel with some of the girls, and it would be like, okay, we would bet on the plane, like, okay, what's the next picture going to be? And everyone would throw out like gym selfie or like someone with a girl cut out of it or like whatever it is. Stop it. That's just again, I realize it's a necessary evil sometimes, but I definitely agree with the out in the wild cold approach.
It's just one of those, it's reached a too much point,
Yes.
right? In the 1970s, 1950s, there was a 0% chance you met on a dating app because iPhones didn't even exist. But today, 300 million Americans are on the dating apps. 300 million,
Ugh.
right? That's 5 and 6 people that in America that are on these apps. And that's a lot of people who have had, have time. And yet, what do you hear people say about dating? They say it's never been worse.
Yeah.
They say dating sucks. In New York, girls and most guys hate dating. They couldn't say anything worse about it. And, there's this great saying. They say, women trade sex for relationship, men trade relationship for sex. Mm-hmm. Men are willing to show you that they're relational and emotionally deep and ask the right things. And then because their ultimate goal is sex. And women are willing to trade the sex up front in order to have that deeper relationship. And that's maybe biological to an extent, but that disconnect is more prevalent than ever because you've got this paradox of choice where if I swipe left or if I swipe right, I have seen people on dates who they're on a first date, and when the person goes to the bathroom, they open up their phone on Hinge.
Exactly. They're looking for next,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's terrible though. I mean, it just feels
is.
like what a drain of energy.
It is. It is very draining. Like dating feels like a part-time job sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in that dating world, but it can be solved by this is how I simply put it: write down everything you want in a partner and then become it.
Oof, that's excellent.
If guys write down, I want her to be like a 10 out of 10. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like emotionally? And they're like, no, physically. I'm like, of course you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God, I love you. Of course you do.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him, right? I probably would have been the same kind. 10 out of 10. I want her to like cook. I want her to be able to cook.
Yeah.
I want her to be able to like be organized. I want her to have a good job, right? I want her to like make 6 figures. In today's day and age, she should, right? All of these things. And I'm like, how many of these do you do? Mm-hmm. 3 to 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 10. It's like, well, you're asking her to be better than you, and that's fine. But you got to be okay with that. And the studies showed that men are not.
No,
men find a hit to their ego when they date a girl that's better than them in especially finances.
Yeah.
Right? Now, personally, I don't struggle with that one. I would love for a girl to make more than me. I'd be like, let's go.
Yeah.
But there are definitely things where if she outcompeted me in some areas, I'd have to like take hold of my emotions and be like, well, Kirk, you got to be okay with this, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you've been conditioned to say you have to be better than this.
Right. Well, and to be in tune enough with yourself to understand that, right? I think so many people, aren't in tune enough with themselves. So when something bumps into something that makes them uncomfortable, whether it's a partner that out-earns them or a partner that, whatever it is, they don't get curious about that. They just avoid it, right?
Sure.
Get curious about why you feel like that, right? One of the things that I talk about in the book a lot is the limiting beliefs. And what people don't realize is that your limiting beliefs are just handcuffs that aren't locked, right? So if someone pushes into you and it's like, I don't want that to be, it's like, get curious about that. Just sit with yourself for a minute and think about, why did that give me pushback on something? What does that make me feel, right? And just getting curious about, okay, and do I want to feel like that? Because maybe you'll find, and what I've found when I'm getting curious about myself is all of those limiting beliefs that I have are garbage, right? They all came in from programming from when I was a child, organized religion, society saying this is what it's supposed to be like. It's like, no, it's not. There's no fucking rules. Like, you can run your life, Kirk, however you want to, right? You don't have to do this because someone thought you should or that because someone thought you should. Like, run your own race. Do whatever it is that resonates with Kirk and whatever feels like it's the right thing for you, as long as you're not hurting other people and you're, doing your thing. Isn't that so beautiful? But so many people feel like they have to do things because that's how they were raised or that's what they were taught or that's whatever. Stop it. Like, you don't have to do all of that.
What do you do, I wonder, and this is a good question for you, right? Like, I don't know how you went about this, but when I started doing the content game, I got a lot of like congratulatory applauses and thumbs up, but I also, from people who I would have considered friends, got a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
And like, like, frankly, it's a lot of shit talking.
Yeah.
Right, amongst themselves, and it all gets back to you, of course.
Sure.
And like, how do you deal with that? Like you're saying, basically, live your life, do your own thing, don't care.
Yeah.
How do you not care? When is it wrong to not care?
I don't think it's ever wrong not to care. I don't give a fuck what other people think. I just don't. Like, if you're at my table of life and I'm not the right fit for you because you realized I thought a certain way or believed a certain thing or whatever, that's okay. People aren't meant to be in your life for forever. You know, I'm not for everyone, but the people I am for ride fucking hard for me, right? And I them. And so I don't care. So many people are twisted up in what other people think, and it's like, bro, I'm not for everybody. Like, it's okay. And especially with you when you're talking about your friends and the shit talking or whatever, that's a big culture in the male situation.
Huge.
Where it's like a man that shows vulnerability. For me, my friends were like, oh my God, thank God she's starting to embrace her feminine side. Because I just had like, big dick energy of whatever. I've spent
put on a dress.
Exactly. I still have not done that. I don't want to show people I have legs. That would be ridiculous. But no, I mean, that's literally the culture that I came from. And so as a woman, it's like, oh, yes, of course you want to have your masculine and your feminine balanced. But as a guy, you show any vulnerability and it's like...
You're at risk of mockery.
It is. And it's like, it's almost like bullying type behavior, but I think it's because they're completely uncomfortable with themselves. And to me, that speaks volumes. And it's like, I don't have time in life for people at my table that have that kind of behavior or unwillingness to kind of figure out who they are, right? I applaud you for getting curious about yourself and figuring out, when you have anger, what is underneath that? What does that feel like? Because I think the emotional intelligence component levels your life up in so many different ways. You don't realize how many fucking Skittles you're wasting on emotional intelligence that's at the bottom, right? I think I read somewhere a statistic where it was talking about just humans in general, that the emotional intelligence stops at about a 12 or 13-year-old level, right?
Okay.
So you look at all of these different people who are acting like middle schoolers, and once you see that, you kind of can't get it out of your head, because if you watch in your friend group, oh, can you believe what Sheila did and this and that and whatever, and it's like, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's absolute 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds in middle school type behavior. I can't unsee that now, right?
Sure.
But that's exactly what it is, because people are too twisted up in what other people think to be able to get curious about themselves or to be able to make changes for what feels right for them. And for me, I just couldn't give a fuck less. That's just been, I mean, I think that's maybe the beauty of being in the older generation, right? I'm 48 years old. I didn't grow up with social media or with where I gave a fuck what other people's comments were about things. It's like, I'm going to live my life. Either that's for you or it's not. And I'm totally fine with it either way. And I think more people should embrace that, because when you're in alignment with yourself, how beautiful is that? Right.
It's nice. I wouldn't say I'm there yet. Like, I definitely still struggle with like the caring more people think. I think, like you said, you said about yourself, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. You can have to sit at my table. I think I'm still in this illusion where I want to be for everybody.
Yeah. Then
right?
go sell ice cream.
You want to be.
Then go sell ice cream. I mean, it just, I understand where you're coming from.
But then even the fitness people would start yelling at me if I sold ice cream.
Yeah, but here's the whole thing. Someone's going to yell at you no matter what.
It's true.
Right. And so you just have to be able to get past that point. And I understand where you're coming from, right? I think it's easier for me because I never did care, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it just doesn't matter. But for people where you grew up in a generation where there was that extra feedback, and so you are kind of a little bit trying to figure out that dance, it's like, just set it down. That's a limiting belief as well. Like, be your authentic, weird, amazing, awesome self, right? You were talking about Brene Brown earlier, and she always signs off with like, stay brave, weird, or awkward, or whatever it is. But, I couldn't agree with that more. Like, weird when it comes out of my mouth is a compliment. Sure. Because what's the fun of everyone being the same in the same box that we're all supposed to be trying to fit into? It's like, fuck no, let your freak flag fly. Do whatever the hell you want to do. Who gives a shit if somebody doesn't like that? Like,
no, I love it. And this would be an example of one of my mental challenges, right? Part of my brain is saying, care what people think, because you need to fit into the herd. And the other part is saying, don't give a fuck. Yeah. It sounds like you've more or less mastered at least this one, where you've said, don't give a fuck.
Don't.
But it is very interesting. And one of the things that you mentioned there was a kind of like the emotional intelligence piece. Men obviously score lower than that in women across the board. They are slower to identify emotions, and they are less accurate in identifying emotions, and that ties into the alexithymia piece. One thing I learned that was interesting, which was absolutely incredible, and this ties in more to the financial side of things. And this is weird to say, but let me explain it. When you look at IQ, the top 1% IQ havers have an average salary that's lower than the top 10% IQ havers. What that means is this, basically, if you take a look at, like, let's just limit it to 100 people on Earth, that one guy who has the highest IQ, he has a lower average salary than the top 10 when you average out their salaries. And so this got researchers interested. If IQ doesn't determine, maybe correlatively, how much you'd earn, what does? And they actually found a stronger correlation with EQ. EQ has a better predictive power of your earning potential than does your IQ.
I believe that.
Isn't that incredible? And it makes more sense now why women are starting to out-earn men. And so, like, this next generation of women are going to out-earn men for days.
Yeah.
And if, one, they're going to college more, two, they have higher EQs. I mean, at a macro level, there's going to be a swarm. It's going to be woman-topia.
Well, and I don't think people realize we don't just want a seat at the table. We want a seat at the fucking head of the table.
Totally.
That's where women are coming from. And you know what? Good for us. Right?
100%.
But I agree to your point about the whole EQ thing, because it just makes you come from a place where you respond instead of react. You have to be willing to really, like, go all in on yourself to figure yourself out in order to have an elevated EQ. But to me, I think it's the most interesting work you'll ever do, right? A lot of the things that you said about masculinity and all of the things, like, I resonated with all of those things, right? I've done all of the stuff, right? My value came from producing and from working and how much money I made. And it literally was, I spent my entire 20s and 30s going, when will it be enough? More, right? It was the biggest house and the best car and, like, all of the shit that I could have. And I realized in my 40s, after I got sober and realized, like, oh, maybe I should get in touch with my emotions. Those are my compass, not something I should be stuffing down and drinking on top of.
Yeah.
The more that I did that, the higher of quality my life became. Not, yes, money, whatever, but just in general, because you're not coming from this reactive space where you don't understand what's happening inside of your body. I had all of those things, right? If you touched me and it was like something that made me feel rejection or embarrassed or whatever, you're getting anger back. You're getting fuck you right back, because I'm not going to acknowledge what I feel on the inside because of the fact that I was so in my masculine energy as I was raised and as all, over all of the years. And so to be at this place where I'm coming to the other side of that, highly, highly, highly recommend, right?
So what was the tipping point for you there? Like, you're in this space where maybe you're occasionally drinking too much, you're yelling at people, you're maybe angry on the road or whatever. And then all of a sudden you decide to say, fuck it all, I'm just going to be raw, authentic, and if you want me, you can have me. If not, then peace out.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I'm looking to see how much time we have left, because I'm going to see how condensed I'm going to make this
Sure.
answer for you.
Yeah.
So I was 39 years old, actually, when this first happened. And I wasn't just a drink too much every once in a while. Like, I was a daily drinker. I drank a lot. I'm in the construction industry where I'm entertaining clients and all of that stuff. And I could keep up with all of them. I could drink men under the table. And I was proud about that, right? Which is great for, being able to puff your chest up and all of those things. Not so much with your family and other people. And I was always a fun drunk, right? I wasn't an angry drunk. I was always the life of the party, like all of that stuff. My sister passed away very unexpectedly and in a tragic way. And it sent me over the rails, right? So I took what was a heavy drinking habit, and I spent the last 18 months of my drinking career ruining my life.
Wow.
I still got up and ran my business and did all of the things, but just I was not present. I was not emotionally there. I was not mentally there. I was none of the things. And so I went to rehab 9 years ago, and it just changed everything for me. And the first couple of years were just kind of putting my life back together, but I didn't like what I saw for who I had been. And it was all of these things where it was just numbing on top of trauma and other shit that I had never addressed. And so I set out on this mission to really figure out who Anne was, with all of these self-improvement books and therapy and healing modalities and ayahuasca. Literally, I've done all of the things.
Amazing.
But it has me on this path of really figuring out, what is that emotion? And then getting in touch with yourself, getting in tune with your nectar, right? Like your inner, that's where God lives to me, right? Getting in touch with all of that so that you can respond. And so my EQ is it is incredible. It's incredible because it's all I want to do. And I look at mine, I look at other people's that I interact with. I talk about my son who's 18, who, halfway through his life got a mom who opened her eyes and started doing the work. He's the most emotionally intelligent young man I've ever met, right? He communicates, isn't afraid to cry, isn't afraid to show his emotions. That's what we need in our young men. But if we don't realize it in ourselves, how can you teach that to your boys, right? I wasn't doing a good job from the time he was 0 to 9, right? And even until he was 10 or 11, until I started figuring this shit out for myself. But then he had a kind of a front row seat to the things that I was learning about me that I didn't know about me, because I didn't know emotions are for pussies, like shove that shit away. That was me until I was 40. I mean, how ridiculous is that? But now that my EQ is through the roof, it's like, God, life is like a game, you know, because you can watch other people and it's like, oh my God. I mean,
That's phenomenal.
it is. It's very exciting work. And so, you know, to encourage other people to get curious about why that made them feel that certain type of way and sit with that or figure out how to react or respond differently. Like, your life will improve by 10x easily if you just work on your EQ. You know?
Is it ever too late?
No. I was, 40. I'm living the best years of my life. Every day of my life is the best day of my life, right? And it doesn't mean bad shit doesn't happen. My dad's in having open heart surgery right now. I was telling you before we get. Most people would be a wreck in that situation. It's like, no, it's going to be fine no matter what the outcome is, right? Because you can handle your emotions and you know what they are, right? When you have like all of these emotions happening, you can't even name them. You have no idea. You're angering and you're raging on top of them. That's not a way to live life, but that's what most people do, right? That's definitely most men, because they weren't taught how to sit with their emotions and feel things and go like, what does that make me feel like? And what am I going to do with that?
Sure.
Right? So
Couldn't agree more.
I know. Kirk, thank you so much for taking time to come
It
and
was
talk
awesome.
with me today. This has been a really, really, really great conversation.
It has been phenomenal. A bit of science, bit of philosophy, a lot of emotion.
Yeah, all of that. So that's our time for today. If you have questions, suggestions, or think you have a story to add and want to be on the podcast, send us an email or DM us. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. And then do all the things to support the pod. Follow, share, rate, and review. We will catch you next time. That's a wrap.